His blind date cancelled last minute until he found her in the parking lot, crying with her children. Grant Whitfield never liked blind dates, but after losing his parents and burying himself in his work for years, his best friend insisted he finally try. So on a quiet Saturday evening, Grant dressed up, reserved a private table at a warm Italian restaurant, and waited, and waited, and waited. At 8:32 p.m., he finally received a message from the matchmaker. "Sorry, Grant, she cancelled last minute. Something came up." He sighed, paid for the untouched appetizers, and walked out into the cool night air. It was supposed to be a simple evening. Instead, it left him lonelier than before. But life had another plan. As he walked through the parking lot toward his car, he heard soft sobbing. He turned and froze. A young woman sat on the curb, her face hidden in her palms. Beside her were two small children, a 4-year-old girl clutching a worn teddy bear, and a 3-year-old boy holding an empty juice box. The little girl whispered, "Mommy, don't cry. We're okay." The mother tried to wipe her tears, but they only fell faster. Grant hesitated for a moment, then slowly approached. "Ma'am, are you safe? Is there anything I can do?" The woman looked up, startled. Her eyes were red, tired, and full of a kind of pain Grant hadn't seen in years. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean to scare them. I didn't know where else to go." Her name was Janelle Carter, and the story tumbled out of her in pieces. Her babysitter cancelled last minute. Her ex refused to help. She took her kids with her to a job interview she desperately needed and was rejected at the door for having them with her. Her car engine stalled as she tried to leave, and the repair bill she feared was more than her entire savings. And now she was stranded with two tired, hungry children crying alone in a parking lot. Grant's chest tightened. A woman he had never met suddenly mattered more than he could explain. He knelt to the children's level and smiled gently. "Hey, are you too hungry?" The boy nodded. The girl shyly held up her teddy bear as if asking for help too. Grant didn't hesitate. He bought them dinner. He called a mechanic he trusted. He paid for the car repair on the spot, pretending it was a discount the shop was offering. He even held the little boy while Janelle helped her daughter use the restroom. But something happened that Grant never expected. The kids adored him. The girl slipped her tiny hand into his without fear. The boy fell asleep on his chest while they waited for the car to be fixed. And Janelle, she looked at Grant like he wasn't a stranger, like he was a miracle. What Janelle didn't know, what no one in that parking lot knew, was that Grant Whitfield was a millionaire CEO of a rapidly growing tech company. He didn't tell her. He didn't want to scare her. He didn't want her to think he was helping for praise. All he knew was that she wasn't his blind date, but she was exactly who he was meant to find. And as he watched her children sleeping peacefully in the back seat of the mechanic's courtesy car, Grant felt something he hadn't felt in years. Home. Before we dive deeper into this beautiful story, I need you to pause for just a second and do something important for me. Drop a comment right now telling me where you're watching from and what time it is. And if you're new to this channel and you love these heartwarming, emotional stories about second chances and unexpected connections, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss when I post these incredible stories. Your support means the world. Now, let's get back to Grant and Janelle. Grant Whitfield had spent the last 5 years building Vantage Solutions from a startup into a $40 million technology company specializing in cloud-based project management software. At 38, he was successful by every conventional measure: wealth, professional recognition, respect in the industry. But personally, his life had been empty. His parents had died in a car accident 4 years ago, sudden, devastating, leaving Grant as their only child with no other close family. He'd thrown himself into work after their deaths, using business expansion as distraction from grief and loneliness. 18-hour days, constant travel, board meetings and investor pitches and product development consuming every moment. It had been effective avoidance, but terrible healing. "You need to start living again," his best friend Marcus had told him repeatedly over the past year. "Grant, your parents wouldn't want you just existing. They'd want you building a life, relationships, maybe family eventually, something beyond just work." Grant had resisted initially. Dating felt impossible when he worked constantly, and after his parents' death, opening himself to caring about people again had felt too risky. What if he lost them too? Better to stay closed off, focused on work where outcomes were controllable and loss was financial rather than emotional. But Marcus had been persistent. One blind date. Just try it. The matchmaking service I used is actually good. They do real personality matching, not just photos and superficial stuff. Just meet one person, Grant. If it doesn't work, fine, but at least try. So Grant had reluctantly agreed. The matchmaker had set him up with someone described as intelligent, professionally successful, shares your interests in technology and travel. They'd arranged to meet Saturday evening at Bella Notte, a cozy Italian restaurant Grant had frequented with his parents years ago. Grant had dressed carefully that evening, not his usual business suits, but nice slacks and a button-down shirt, trying to look approachable rather than corporate. He'd arrived 15 minutes early, requested the private corner booth the matchmaker had reserved, ordered appetizers to ease his nervousness. Then he'd waited. 7:30 became 7:45, then 8 o'clock. Grant had texted the matchmaker asking if his date was running late. "She hasn't responded to my messages," came the reply. "Let me try calling her." By 8:30, Grant had eaten both appetizers himself, working through nervous energy. The server had refilled his water 3 times, clearly aware he was being stood up but too professional to mention it. Finally, at 8:32 p.m., the message had arrived. "Sorry, Grant. She cancelled last minute. Something came up. I'll reach out next week about rescheduling with someone else." Grant had sat there processing not anger exactly, but deep disappointment tinged with familiar loneliness. He'd finally tried opening himself to possibility and had been immediately rejected. It had felt like confirmation that staying closed off was safer, that Marcus had been wrong about him needing to date. He'd paid for the untouched appetizers, left generous tip despite his mood, and had walked out into the cool April evening. His car had been parked at the far end of the lot. Grant always parked away from other vehicles, protective of his BMW's finish in ways that probably revealed how little else he cared about. That's when he'd heard the crying, soft at first, almost lost in evening traffic sounds, but unmistakably someone sobbing. Grant had paused, looking around, and had spotted them, a woman sitting on the parking lot curb, face buried in her hands, shoulders shaking. 2 small children beside her, a girl holding a worn teddy bear, and a boy clutching an empty juice box. Everything in Grant had screamed to keep walking. This was clearly a family situation, maybe domestic, potentially dangerous to insert himself into. He didn't know these people. Their problems weren't his responsibility. But then the little girl had whispered so softly, Grant had barely heard it, "Mummy, don't cry. We're okay." And the mother had tried to wipe her tears, clearly trying to be strong for her children, but the tears had kept falling. The pure exhaustion and despair in her posture had been visceral. Grant had recognized it from his own grief after losing his parents. So, despite every logical reason to walk away, Grant had approached slowly. "Ma'am, are you safe? Is there anything I can do?" The woman had looked up, startled and clearly embarrassed to be discovered crying in a parking lot. She'd been in her late 20s probably, wearing clothes that were clean but worn, makeup smudged from crying. Her eyes had been red, exhausted, carrying pain Grant had immediately recognized as the kind that came from sustained struggle rather than single crisis. "I'm sorry," she'd whispered, voice rough from crying. "I didn't mean to. We're fine. I'm just having a bad day. We'll be okay." But even as she'd said it, fresh tears had started falling, and the little girl had looked at Grant with such hope, like maybe this stranger could help where her mother was struggling. "What happened?" Grant had asked gently, crouching to be less imposing. "You don't have to tell me, but sometimes it helps to talk." And somehow, his genuine tone, or maybe just desperation for someone to hear her, had prompted the story to spill out. Her name was Janelle Carter, 28 years old, single mother to 4-year-old Emma and 3-year-old Lucas. She'd been working as a waitress at a chain restaurant for 3 years, enough to barely cover rent and childcare, but not enough to build savings or security. "My babysitter cancelled 2 hours before my shift today," Janelle had explained, words tumbling out between attempts to stop crying. My ex, the kid's father, he's supposed to have them on weekends, but he didn't show up. Just texted saying something came up, like he always does. So I had to call in sick to work, which means I don't get paid for today's shift, and my manager was furious because we're already short-staffed. But then this afternoon, I got a call about a job interview, Janelle had continued. Office manager position at a medical clinic, better pay, actual benefits, normal daytime hours. They had a last-minute opening today at 6 p.m. and could I come in? I said yes, even though I still didn't have childcare, because I was desperate. I thought maybe I could just bring the kids, keep them quiet in the waiting room, and the interviewer wouldn't notice. Grant had winced, knowing how that had probably gone. The receptionist took one look at Emma and Lucas and told me the interview was cancelled, Janelle had said, fresh tears falling. Said they needed someone who could prioritize work over family obligations, that bringing children to an interview showed poor judgment. I tried explaining my situation, but she just said the position had been filled and I should leave. I was walking back to my car feeling completely defeated, Janelle had continued, when the engine wouldn't start. Just clicking sounds, no turnover. I got the kids out safely and called roadside assistance. They said it's probably the starter, maybe the alternator, could be $500 or more to fix, but I have maybe $300 in savings. And without my car I can't get to my waitressing job, which means I can't earn money to fix the car. I'm stuck. And I was trying not to cry in front of Emma and Lucas, but I couldn't help it. Grant had listened to all of this with growing anger at systems that trapped people in impossible situations, and compassion for this woman, clearly doing her absolute best under impossible circumstances. "Are your kids hungry?" Grant had asked, gesturing toward the restaurant behind them. "We ate lunch," Janelle had said quickly, clearly not wanting charity. "We're okay." But Emma had looked up at Grant and had said quietly, "Mommy didn't eat. She gave us her food." Janelle had closed her eyes, clearly embarrassed. "Emma, that's not. When was the last time you ate?" Grant had asked directly. "This morning. I had coffee and toast. I'm fine." "You're not fine," Grant had said gently, "and your kids probably could eat more even if they had lunch. Please let me buy you dinner. The restaurant I was just at has excellent food. We can sit inside where it's warm and figure out your car situation while you eat." Janelle had looked at him with suspicion mixed with desperate hope. "Why would you help us? You don't know us. Because you need help and I'm able to provide it," Grant had replied simply. No strings, no expectations, just one person helping another. Something in his tone, genuine kindness without pity or judgment, had convinced Janelle. She'd nodded, wiping her face again, and had helped her children stand. "Okay, thank you. We'll repay you once I get my car fixed and get back to work." "Don't worry about repayment," Grant had said. "Just come eat." He'd led them back into Bella Notte, where the hostess had looked surprised to see him return with a woman and 2 children. "The lady I was waiting for arrived," Grant had explained smoothly. "Can we get that corner booth back?" They'd been seated quickly, Grant requesting high chair for Lucas, even though the boy protested he was big enough for regular chair. The server had brought menus and Grant had encouraged Janelle to order whatever she wanted. "The kids can share a pasta dish," Janelle had said, still trying to minimize costs despite Grant's offer. "And I'll just have water and maybe side salad." "Mom," Grant had said gently, using the universal term deliberately, "your kids just watched you crying in a parking lot because life has been impossibly hard. Let me do something nice for you. Order real food, something you'll actually enjoy. The lasagna here is excellent, or the chicken parmesan, please." Maybe it had been his genuine tone, or maybe just exhaustion from constantly struggling, but Janelle had finally relented. She'd ordered the chicken parmesan. Emma had gotten spaghetti with meatballs. Lucas had wanted mac and cheese. Grant had ordered his usual penne arrabbiata, more for appearance than hunger, since he'd eaten both appetizers earlier. While they'd waited for food, Emma had shyly shown Grant her teddy bear. "This is Mr. Buttons. Mommy gave him to me when I was baby." "He looks like a very good bear," Grant had said seriously. "Has he been taking good care of you?" Emma had nodded. "He helps when I'm scared. When Daddy doesn't come, Mr. Buttons says it's okay." The casual mention of absent father from a 4-year-old's perspective had made Grant's chest tighten. Lucas had been less talkative but had warmed up when Grant had asked about his favorite toys. "Trucks," the boy had declared. "Big trucks that go vroom. My dad had a truck when I was your age," Grant had shared. "Big red pickup truck. He used to let me pretend to drive it in our driveway." "You have, Daddy?" Lucas had asked with the directness only small children possessed. "I did," Grant had confirmed. "He passed away a few years ago, but I have really good memories of him." Janelle had been watching this exchange with complicated expression, surprise that this stranger was engaging genuinely with her children, gratitude for his kindness, maybe some sadness recognizing her kid's father didn't provide this kind of present attention. When food had arrived, Grant had watched Janelle take her first bites of the chicken parmesan and had seen visible relief wash over her face, the comfort of warm, good food after what had clearly been a very difficult day. The kids had eaten enthusiastically, Emma careful with her spaghetti but clearly enjoying it, Lucas getting mac and cheese everywhere but happy. "While you eat," Grant had said casually, "let me make some calls about your car. I know a good mechanic who might be able to look at it tonight if I ask nicely." "You don't have to," Janelle had started. "I know I don't have to," Grant had interrupted gently. "I want to. Let me help, please." He'd stepped away from the table, calling his personal mechanic a man Grant had been using for years and had always treated well, resulting in loyalty and willingness to accommodate. "Hey Tom, it's Grant Whitfield. I have a situation. Friend of mine has a car that won't start, stuck in the Bella Notte parking lot with her 2 small kids. Any chance you can send someone to look at it tonight? I'll pay premium rate for emergency service." Tom had agreed, promising to have his best technician there within the hour. Grant had returned to the table where Janelle had been helping Lucas wipe mac and cheese off his face. "Mechanic will be here in an hour," Grant had reported. "He'll diagnose the problem and give us estimate." "I can't afford much beyond $300, Janelle had reminded him, worry evident in her voice. "Let's see what the problem is first," Grant had said. "We'll figure it out." They'd finished dinner, Grant ordering dessert for the kids despite Janelle's protests. Tiramisu for Emma, who'd asked what it was and had been delighted by the description. Chocolate cake for Lucas, who'd simply seen cake on the menu and had wanted it. And as they'd eaten, something remarkable had happened. The kids had relaxed completely. Emma had started chattering about her preschool and her best friend Sophia and how she wanted to be a teacher someday. Lucas had climbed into Grant's lap without invitation, making himself comfortable like he belonged there, sticky fingers and all. And Janelle had looked at Grant differently, not like a stranger helping out of pity, but like someone she was beginning to trust. Maybe even like someone who might understand what she'd been going through. "Why are you really doing this?" Janelle had asked quietly, while the kids had been occupied with dessert. "Men don't usually just help single mothers in parking lots without wanting something." "I was supposed to have a blind date tonight," Grant had admitted. "She cancelled at the last minute. I was walking to my car feeling sorry for myself when I heard you crying. And I thought, here I am upset about being stood up for dinner while you're dealing with actual crisis. Car breakdown, job rejection, exhausted children, no safety net. My problem was ego. Yours was survival, helping you put things in perspective." "So this is guilt?" Janelle had asked, not accusatory but genuinely trying to understand. "No," Grant had said honestly. "This is recognizing that I have resources, money, connections, time. Tonight I'd planned to spend on a date that can genuinely help you. Using those resources feels better than going home alone to feel sorry for myself." Before Janelle could respond, Grant's phone had rung. Tom, the mechanic, reporting that his technician had diagnosed the problem: dead battery and failed alternator. Total repair cost, $750 including parts, labor, and emergency service fee. Grant had seen Janelle's face fall. "I can't afford that. I'll have to figure out payment plan or—" "Tom," Grant had interrupted, "do the repairs. I'll cover it." "Grant, I can't let you," Janelle had protested. "Tell you what," Grant had said, thinking quickly. "Consider this a loan. Once you get back on your feet financially, you can pay me back. No interest, no timeline, just when you're able. That way it's not charity, it's helping you get through crisis so you can get back to work." Janelle had looked skeptical but desperate enough to accept. "Okay, but I will pay you back, every cent." "I believe you," Grant had said, and surprisingly, he had believed her. Something about Janelle's combination of pride and gratitude had convinced him she'd honor that commitment. The repairs had taken 2 hours. Grant had stayed with them the entire time, not out of obligation, but because leaving had felt wrong. Emma had fallen asleep against his side in the restaurant booth. Lucas had demanded Grant hold him, declaring, "You nice," and promptly passing out on Grant's chest. And Janelle had watched all of this with tears forming again, but different tears than the desperate ones in the parking lot. These were tears of relief, of gratitude, of recognizing that maybe the universe hadn't completely abandoned her family. "Your kids are wonderful," Grant had said quietly, careful not to wake Lucas sleeping on his chest. "Emma is so bright and articulate. Lucas is affectionate and trusting. You're doing an amazing job raising them despite incredibly difficult circumstances." "I'm barely surviving," Janelle had admitted. "Some days I don't know how I'm going to feed them or keep the lights on or maintain childcare so I can work. And their father, he provides exactly the court-mandated minimum child support and nothing more. No extra help, no showing up for his scheduled time with them. They're amazing kids despite him, not because of anything he contributes. They're amazing because of you," Grant had corrected, "because you fight for them every single day. Because you went to that interview, even without childcare, because you're trying to build better life for them. Because when your car broke down and everything fell apart, you still made sure they were safe and comforted even while you were falling apart. That's excellent parenting, Janelle. Don't diminish that." Janelle had cried again then, quietly so she wouldn't wake the children. "Thank you, for dinner, for fixing the car, for being kind to them, but mostly for saying that. I needed to hear that someone sees how hard I'm trying." When the mechanic had finally called saying the car was ready, Grant had gently transferred sleeping Lucas to Janelle's arms and had carefully scooped up Emma, still clutching Mr. Buttons, to carry her to the car. He'd helped strap both children into their car seats, checking the buckles carefully to ensure they were secure. "Can I give you my number?" Grant had asked, as Janelle had prepared to drive away. "Just so you can let me know you got home safely. And so you have my contact information for when you want to start repaying the car repair." Janelle had looked at him for a long moment, clearly evaluating whether this was genuine care or prelude to something more problematic. Whatever she'd seen in his expression had convinced her. Okay, yes. They'd exchanged numbers, Grant programming her contact as Janelle Parking Lot to distinguish her from business contacts. "Drive safely. Text me when you're home." Janelle had driven away with her sleeping children in the back seat, and Grant had stood in the parking lot watching until her taillights disappeared, feeling something he hadn't felt in 5 years, like maybe his life could be about more than just work. Like maybe he'd just met someone who mattered. He'd driven home to his empty luxury apartment, the space suddenly feeling even more hollow than usual after spending hours with Janelle's warm family. His phone had buzzed shortly after he'd arrived, a text from Janelle. "We're home safe. Kids still sleeping. Grant, I don't know how to thank you for tonight. You didn't have to help us, but you did, and you treated my children with such kindness. That meant everything. I will pay you back for the car repairs. Thank you for believing me about that. Janelle." Grant had smiled reading the message, responding simply, "I'm glad you're home safe. Your kids are wonderful. Take care of each other. Grant." He'd assumed that would be the end of it, a nice evening helping someone in crisis, the kind of good deed that felt better than his usual evenings alone. He'd gone to bed feeling better about humanity and his place in it than he had in months. But life, as Grant was about to discover, had different plans. Because that evening in the parking lot hadn't been an ending. It had been a beginning of something neither Grant nor Janelle had been looking for, but both desperately needed. Home, family, love, built on genuine care rather than romantic fantasy. All of it growing from one cancelled blind date and one chance encounter in a parking lot. The Sunday morning after meeting Janelle and her children in the parking lot, Grant had woken thinking about them. Had they slept well? Were the kids okay? Was Janelle managing the stress of her situation? He'd found himself checking his phone repeatedly, half hoping for a message from her but not wanting to intrude by texting first. Around noon, his phone had buzzed with a text from Janelle. "Grant, the kids wanted me to thank you again for dinner and fixing the car. Emma keeps talking about the nice man who held Lucas. Would it be okay if we repaid you for the car repairs in installments, maybe $50 per month? I know that will take over a year, but it's what I can manage. Janelle. Grant had smiled reading the message, appreciating her determination to repay the debt despite her financial constraints. But he'd also recognized that $50 monthly was probably a significant sacrifice for someone barely making ends meet on a waitress salary. He'd called her instead of texting back, wanting to hear her voice. Janelle, hi, I got your message about repayment. Can we talk about this? Of course, Janelle had replied, sounding slightly nervous. Grant, I know $750 is a lot, but I promise I'll pay you back. It might take time, but what if instead of money, you repaid me with something else? Grant had interrupted gently. There had been a pause. I'm not sure what you mean. I'd like to see you and the kids again, Grant had said. Not as repayment exactly, but as friendship. Janelle, yesterday evening was the best night I've had in 5 years. Your children are wonderful. You're clearly an amazing mother. I enjoyed spending time with all of you more than I've enjoyed anything in longer than I can remember. Could we do it again? Maybe lunch this afternoon? My treat, no debt involved. Just friends spending time together. Another pause. Then, Grant, I need to be honest. I'm not looking for dating right now. My life is too complicated, and I need to focus on my kids and getting financially stable. If you're helping because you think this could become romantic, I'm not, Grant had assured her quickly. Janelle, I'm not trying to date you. I'm lonely. I lost my parents 4 years ago, and I've been burying myself in work ever since. Yesterday, spending time with you and Emma and Lucas, I remembered what it felt like to be around family, to have normal conversation about normal things rather than business strategy, to hold a kid who fell asleep feeling safe. I'm not looking for romance. I'm looking for connection, friendship. If that's something you'd be comfortable with, no pressure, no expectations, I'd really like to see you again. Janelle had been quiet, clearly evaluating his sincerity. Just friendship? Nothing more? Just friendship, Grant had confirmed. I promise. Okay, Janelle had finally agreed. The kids would love to see you again. Emma has asked about you 3 times this morning. Where did you want to meet for lunch? They'd met at a family-friendly restaurant with a play area. Grant's suggestion after researching kid-friendly dining options online. Emma and Lucas had been thrilled to see him, both children immediately hugging his legs in greeting. And Janelle had looked less exhausted than the previous evening, her smile more genuine. Over lunch, Grant had learned more about their lives. Janelle had been working at the chain restaurant for 3 years, making barely above minimum wage, plus tips that varied wildly depending on shifts and customer generosity. She'd been trying to save money for community college courses in business management, but kept having to use those savings for emergencies, car repairs, medical bills, childcare problems. My ex, Marcus, provides exactly the court-ordered child support and nothing more, Janelle had explained, while the kids played in the restaurant's indoor playground. He was supposed to have them every other weekend, but he cancels constantly. Says he's busy with work or his new girlfriend or just doesn't feel like it. The kids keep asking why Daddy doesn't want to see them, and I don't know what to tell them that won't hurt more than the truth already does. The truth being that their father is failing them, Grant had said quietly. Janelle, that's not your fault. You're doing everything right. He's choosing not to be present. I know, Janelle had replied. But knowing that doesn't make it easier when Emma asks if she did something wrong to make Daddy not love her. She's 4 years old. She shouldn't have to wonder if she's unlovable. Grant's chest had tightened with anger at the absent father and compassion for these children growing up, wondering why they weren't enough to make their dad stay involved. Can I ask something that might be too personal? You can ask. I'll tell you if it's too personal. What happened with you and Marcus? How did you end up as a single mother, with a man who won't even show up for his scheduled time with his kids? Janelle had sighed. We met when I was 22, working at the restaurant where I still work. He was charming, ambitious, talked about building his own business someday. We dated for a year before I got pregnant with Emma. Marcus said, all the right things, we'd get married, build a family, he'd provide. But after Emma was born, everything changed. He resented the baby, Janelle had continued. Resented that I couldn't work full-time anymore because childcare cost more than I made. Resented that our lives revolved around a crying infant rather than his convenience. When I got pregnant with Lucas 18 months later, unplanned but not unwelcome, Marcus completely checked out. He moved out before Lucas was born, paid exactly what the court ordered but nothing beyond that. Sees the kids maybe once every 2 months, despite having scheduled every other weekend custody. "And you've been doing this alone for 3 years, Grant had summarized. Working full-time, raising 2 children, managing all the household and parenting responsibilities with minimal child support and 0 co-parenting help. Pretty much, Janelle had confirmed. Some days I barely keep it together. Yesterday was one of those days where everything fell apart at once and I couldn't hold it in anymore. You're remarkably strong, Grant had said genuinely. Janelle, most people would have broken under those circumstances. You're still fighting, still trying to build better life for your kids, still maintaining kindness despite how hard everything is. That's incredible. Janelle had looked at him with tears forming. Thank you for saying that. Most people just see struggling single mother, probably made bad choices, probably deserves her situation. You're the first person in a long time who's seen that I'm doing my best. They'd spent 3 hours at that restaurant, conversation flowing easily between watching the kids play and keeping them fed. Grant had learned about Janelle's dreams, finishing her education, moving into professional work, eventually buying a small house where the kids could have their own rooms and a backyard. Janelle had learned about Grant's grief after losing his parents, his tendency to use work as emotional avoidance, his realization after the cancelled blind date that maybe he needed actual human connection rather than just professional achievements. "Can I ask why you didn't tell me what you do for work?" Janelle had asked toward the end of lunch. "I Googled you last night, Grant Whitfield, CEO of Vantage Solutions, worth approximately $40 million. You let me think you were just some guy who happened to help us." Grant had winced slightly. "Would you have accepted my help if you'd known I was wealthy?" "Probably not," Janelle had admitted. "I'd have been suspicious about your motives, assumed you thought money entitled you to something from me." "Exactly," Grant had said. "Janelle, my wealth creates barriers with most people. They either want something from me or they're intimidated by the economic disparity. I wanted you to see me just Grant, the guy who bought your kids dinner rather than Grant Whitfield, the CEO." "Does knowing change how you feel about our friendship?" Janelle had thought about it. "I guess I understand why you didn't mention it. And no, it doesn't change how I feel. You've been kind to my children and respectful to me regardless of money. That matters more than your bank account." Over the following weeks, they'd fallen into comfortable patterns. Grant had started visiting them regularly. Sunday lunches became standing plans, with occasional weekday dinners when Janelle's schedule allowed. He'd been remarkably good with Emma and Lucas, engaging with their interests, reading bedtime stories when he was there late enough, making them laugh with silly voices and games. "The kids adore you," Janelle had observed one evening after putting Emma and Lucas to bed at her small apartment, the first time Grant had been invited to her home. "Grant, you're better with them than their own father ever was. I don't understand why you're not married with your own family." "I was engaged once," Grant had admitted, "about 6 years ago, before my company became really successful. She broke it off when I told her I wanted to wait on having children until the business was more stable. Looking back, I think she was more interested in the lifestyle my money could provide than in actually building partnership with me. After that ended, and especially after my parents died, I just focused on work. Easier than risking being hurt again. But now," Janelle had prompted, "now I'm realizing that work can't fill all the empty spaces," Grant had said. "Spending time with you and the kids has shown me what I've been missing. Janelle, I meant what I said about just wanting friendship, but I need you to know that you and Emma and Lucas have become really important to me. Not romantically, I'm respecting your boundaries about that, but as people I genuinely care about." 3 months after meeting Janelle in the parking lot, Grant had made a decision. He'd called her one evening after the kids were asleep. "I have a proposition. Please hear me out before you say no." "That's a concerning way to start a conversation," Janelle had replied, though her tone had been amused rather than worried. The job interview you had, the one that got cancelled when you brought the kids, was for office manager at a medical clinic, right? Better pay, benefits, normal daytime hours? Yes. Why? Vantage Solutions needs an office manager for our satellite office downtown, Grant had said. The position involves managing facilities, coordinating between departments, handling administrative tasks, supporting the office director. It pays $60,000 annually with full benefits, health insurance, retirement matching, paid time off, regular 9 to 5 hours, weekends off. Janelle, would you be interested? There had been a long pause. Grant, I can't accept a job just because we're friends. That's people would think I'm using you, or that you're expecting something from me because you gave me employment. I'm not offering this because we're friends, Grant had clarified. I'm offering because you're qualified. You've been managing restaurant operations for 3 years, coordinating schedules, handling customer service issues, managing inventory. Those are exactly the skills office managers need. Yes, you don't have office experience specifically, but you have transferable skills, and you're clearly smart and capable. Janelle, I'm not giving you charity. I'm offering you an actual job you're qualified for that happens to be at my company. And if I fail, if I can't do the work, then we'll address that through normal performance review processes, same as any employee, Grant had said. But Janelle, I don't think you'll fail. I think you'll excel. You're organized, detail-oriented, good with people, problem-solving constantly in your current job. You just need opportunity to apply those skills in professional setting. Janelle had been quiet again. Finally, can I think about it? This feels like a big decision. Of course. Take whatever time you need. She'd called back 2 days later. I want the job, but Grant, I need you to promise that if I'm not performing well, you'll tell me directly. I don't want special treatment because we're friends. I want to earn this position and keep it through actual competence. I promise, Grant had agreed. You'll be reporting to the satellite office director, not to me directly. So, your performance reviews will be handled by him based on actual work quality. No special treatment, just fair opportunity. Janelle had started at Vantage Solutions 2 weeks later, and Grant had watched her thrive. The satellite office director had reported that she'd adapted quickly, learned new systems efficiently, improved office organization noticeably within her first month, and Janelle's life had transformed. Steady income, allowing her to move to a better apartment, health insurance meaning she could take Emma and Lucas for dental checkups they'd been putting off, regular hours meaning she could have consistent bedtime routines with her kids rather than constantly varying schedules. You changed our lives, Janelle had told Grant during one of their Sunday lunches about 2 months after she'd started the new job. Grant, I'm not just surviving anymore. I'm actually building something. I opened a savings account last week, something I haven't been able to do in years. Emma is enrolled in a better preschool program. Lucas has new clothes that actually fit. We're okay, better than okay. And it's because you gave me opportunity. You're the one who made it work, Grant had replied. Janelle, I gave you a job interview. You earned the position through your qualifications, and you've kept it through excellent work. Don't diminish your role in this success. 6 months after meeting in the parking lot, something shifted between them. Grant had been having dinner with Janelle and the kids at their apartment, now a regular weekday occurrence. On nights Janelle didn't work late. After they'd put the kids to bed together, they'd been sitting on Janelle's small couch talking when she'd suddenly turned to him. Grant, can I ask you something honest? Always. Are you still interested in just friendship, or has that changed? Grant's heart had started racing. What makes you ask? Because I watch you with my kids, and I see how much you love them, Janelle had said. And I watch you with me and I see something more than friendship in your eyes. Grant, if your feelings have changed, I need you to be honest, because mine have changed too. How have they changed? Grant had asked carefully. I'm falling in love with you, Janelle had admitted. I've been fighting it for months because I told you I didn't want romance, because I was scared of complicating our friendship, because I worried you were just being nice because you felt sorry for us. But Grant, you show up consistently. You love my children genuinely. You helped me transform my life, not through rescue, but through actual opportunity. And somewhere in all of that, friendship became love. Grant had felt relief and joy flooding through him. "I'm in love with you too. I have been for months. But I promised you just friendship, and I didn't want to pressure you or make you feel obligated because I'd helped you. Janelle, I want everything: partnership, building life together, being a real family, with you and Emma and Lucas. But only if that's what you want too." "It's what I want," Janelle had confirmed. "Grant, you're already part of our family," Emma asks, "when you're coming over every single day." "Lucas calls you Gran because he can't quite say your full name, and I think he's trying to find something that means you're ours. You read them bedtime stories and help with bath time and know their favorite foods and their fears and their dreams. You're already their dad in every way that matters, except legally." "Then let's make it legal," Grant had said. "Not immediately, we should date properly first. Make sure this works romantically the way it's worked as friendship. But Janelle, I want to marry you eventually. I want to adopt Emma and Lucas, if Marcus would allow it. I want us to be a real family." They'd kissed then, their first kiss after 6 months of friendship, and it had felt like coming home, natural and right and full of promise. They dated for a year before Grant had proposed, wanting to ensure the relationship worked romantically and that Emma and Lucas adjusted well to the shift from Mummy's friend Grant to Mummy's boyfriend Grant. The kids had been thrilled Emma had started calling him Dad Grant to distinguish him from her biological father, and Lucas had shortened it to just Dad within weeks. "Will you marry Mommy?" Emma had asked Grant directly about 8 months into his relationship with Janelle. "Because if you do, you'll be our real dad, and we won't have to wait to see you." "I'm planning to ask her," Grant had confirmed. "Would that be okay with you and Lucas?" "Yes," Emma had practically shouted. "Then we can all live together and be a family." Grant had proposed on the 1-year anniversary of meeting Janelle in the parking lot. He'd taken them all back to Bella Notte, the restaurant where he'd bought them dinner that first night, and after dessert had gotten down on one knee. "Janelle Carter, 1 year ago my blind date cancelled and I walked through a parking lot feeling sorry for myself. Then I found you crying with your children and my life changed completely. You've shown me what love actually means: partnership between equals, building life together, choosing each other every day despite challenges. You've let me be part of your family, let me love your children, shown me what home feels like. Will you marry me? Will you let me be your husband and Emma and Lucas's dad legally and permanently?" "Yes," Janelle had managed through tears. "Grant, yes, you're already our family. Let's make it official." They'd married 3 months later in a small ceremony focused on family rather than spectacle. Emma had been flower girl, Lucas had been ring bearer, and both children had giggled through the entire ceremony, clearly delighted that Dad Grant was officially becoming their father. In his vows, Grant had said, "Janelle, you came into my life when I'd given up on finding genuine connection. I was drowning in work, using professional success to fill spaces my parents' deaths had created. Then I found you in a parking lot, desperate, exhausted, crying with your children, and something in me recognized that you mattered. Not as charity case or romantic prospect, but as person who needed help that I could provide. These 2 years building life together have been the best of my existence," Grant had continued. "You've shown me what partnership means: 2 people supporting each other's growth, both bringing different strengths, both committed to building something better together. Emma and Lucas have shown me what being a father means: showing up consistently, loving unconditionally, being present for the small moments as well as big ones. You 3 are my family. Thank you for choosing me." In her vows, Janelle had said, "Grant, you found me at my absolute lowest point. Car broken down, job rejection still stinging, children tired and hungry, me crying in a parking lot, wondering how I'd feed them. You could have walked past. Instead, you stopped. You helped without expecting anything. You saw my children as humans deserving kindness rather than burdens to be avoided. That first act of compassion changed our entire lives. But what I love most about you," Janelle had continued, "is that you didn't stop at that one evening. You kept showing up. You built genuine friendship with me before pursuing romance. You loved my children for who they are rather than seeing them as obstacles to overcome. You gave me employment opportunity but required that I earn it through actual competence. You respected my independence while supporting my growth. Grant, you've shown me what healthy love looks like: partnership rather than rescue, respect rather than control, consistent presence rather than dramatic gestures. I choose you today and every day. 5 years after meeting in the parking lot, Grant and Janelle stood in the same spot where they'd first encountered each other, holding hands, while Emma, now 9, and Lucas, now 8, played nearby. They'd brought their youngest 3-year-old twins, Grace and Nathan, born 2 years after Grant and Janelle's wedding. 5 years since my blind date cancelled, Grant had marveled. 5 years since I walked through this parking lot and found you crying. Janelle, that was the most important moment of my life. Not because I rescued you, you didn't need rescuing, just temporary help, but because I chose to stop and you chose to accept help. Those 2 choices created everything we have now. 4 children, successful careers, actual partnership, Janelle had listed. Grant, sometimes I still can't believe this is our life. 5 years ago, I was a struggling single mother working at a chain restaurant, barely affording rent, watching my kids ask why their dad didn't love them enough to show up. Now they have a father who adores them, siblings who make them laugh, stability I never imagined possible. And I have family, Grant had added. Purpose beyond just work, home that actually feels like home rather than just expensive, empty space. Janelle, you gave me everything I'd been missing: love, partnership, children to raise, reasons to come home at reasonable hours rather than working until midnight. That parking lot meeting changed both our lives. Emma had run over then, Grace toddling behind her. Dad, can we get ice cream like that first night you helped us? Mummy said you bought us dinner when the car was broken. Absolutely, Grant had agreed, scooping up Grace while Janelle gathered Nathan and Lucas. Let's go celebrate 5 years of being family. As they'd walked toward the restaurant together, 2 parents, 4 children, looking like any normal family despite their extraordinary beginning, Grant had felt profound gratitude. His blind date cancelling had felt like rejection at the time, like confirmation he'd never find genuine connection. Instead, it had freed him to be exactly where he was needed, in a parking lot helping a desperate mother, beginning a relationship built not on romance, but on compassion, creating family through choice rather than biology. 10 years after that parking lot meeting, Grant and Janelle celebrated their 8th wedding anniversary with a family trip to the beach, all 6 of them, Emma now 14, Lucas 13, Grace and Nathan 8. Sitting on the beach, watching their children play in the waves, they'd reflected on the decade since that transformative evening. Do you ever think about how different our lives would be if your blind date hadn't cancelled? Janelle had asked. Or if you'd walked to your car 5 minutes earlier or later and missed seeing us? Sometimes, Grant had admitted. But Janelle, I think we would have found each other eventually. Maybe not through a parking lot meeting, but somehow, because what we have isn't just about that one night, it's about who we both are. Me wanting genuine connection, you needing support, but also bringing so much strength and capability. Those qualities would have brought us together somehow. I'm glad it happened the way it did, though, Janelle had said. That first evening, you helping without knowing anything about me beyond immediate crisis, me accepting help despite pride and fear that established the foundation for everything else. Trust built through actions rather than words. Respect demonstrated through how we treated each other. Partnership beginning as friendship rather than romance. Their children had run up then, sand-covered and laughing, Nathan demanding Grant build a sandcastle while Grace pulled Janelle toward the water. Emma and Lucas, teenagers now, and slightly too cool for open family affection, had nonetheless sat close to their parents, clearly comfortable and happy. This is family, Grant had said, watching his children play. Not perfect, not always easy, but genuine, built on foundation of that parking lot evening when I chose to help and you chose to accept it. Janelle, I'd relive that night 1,000 times knowing it led to this. 15 years after the parking lot meeting, they'd gathered with extended family to celebrate Emma's high school graduation. The 18-year-old who'd been a shy 4-year-old clutching a teddy bear in a parking lot was now confident, articulate, headed to college with full academic scholarship to study social work. I want to help families like ours was, Emma had explained during her graduation speech. Families facing impossible circumstances, parents trying desperately to provide for their children, kids wondering if they're loved. I want to be the person who helps them find stability and hope, like Dad Grant helped us 15 years ago when we were lost. Grant had been crying listening to his daughter legally adopted 5 years earlier, when Marcus had finally agreed to terminate his parental rights rather than continue paying child support. Emma was his daughter in every way that mattered, and hearing her credit him with changing their family's trajectory had been profoundly moving. Lucas, now 17 and preparing for his own college journey, had added his thoughts. I don't remember much from before Dad Grant. Just feelings being scared, Mommy crying a lot, never having enough food. But I remember the night Dad showed up. I remember him holding me while we waited for the car to be fixed, feeling safe for the first time I could articulate. Everything got better after that night. Not immediately, it took years of work from both Mom and Dad, but that parking lot meeting started everything. 20 years after the parking lot meeting, Grant had passed away at 58 from sudden heart attack, unexpected, devastating, leaving Janelle a widow far too young. The grief had been overwhelming for the entire family, but especially for Emma and Lucas, who'd known Grant as their real father since childhood. At his funeral, Janelle had reflected on their 20 years together. Grant and I met because his blind date cancelled. He'd planned to spend that evening with someone he'd never met, trying to find connection after years of loneliness following his parents' deaths. Instead, he spent it in a parking lot helping me and my children when we were at our absolute lowest. That one act of compassion, stopping to help when he could have walked past, changed 6 lives completely. Janelle had continued. Mine, Emma's, Lucas's, and eventually Grace's, Nathan's, and Grant's own life. We became family not through romance first, but through Grant choosing to help, and me choosing to accept that help with gratitude rather than pride. From that foundation came genuine partnership, love built on respect and mutual support, family created through choice as much as biology. Grant gave me employment opportunity that transformed our economic circumstances, Janelle had said, but more importantly, he gave my children a father who loved them unconditionally, who showed up consistently, who chose them every single day despite having no biological obligation. Emma and Lucas had a father who cared, who attended every school event, who helped with homework, who talked them through fears and celebrated their successes. That presence, that consistent love, mattered more than any financial support. 25 years after the parking lot meeting, Janelle had gathered her children and grandchildren to return to that spot, now marked with a small memorial plaque Grant's company had installed. On this spot, 25 years ago, Grant Whitfield met Janelle Carter and her children Emma and Lucas, beginning the family that would define all their lives. Remember, one act of compassion can change everything. Tell us the story, Grandma, one of Emma's children had requested, about the night you met Grandpa Grant. And so Janelle had told it again about the car breaking down, the job rejection, sitting on the curb crying while Emma and Lucas tried to comfort her, about the stranger who'd stopped to help, who'd bought them dinner, who'd paid for car repairs, who'd held Lucas and engaged with Emma, about how that stranger had become friend, then partner, then husband and father. The lesson, Janelle had concluded, isn't about hoping for rescue. It's about the power of choosing compassion when you're able and accepting help with gratitude when you need it. Grandpa Grant had resources, money, connections, time that evening that could genuinely help us. He chose to use those resources compassionately rather than walking past our crisis, and I chose to accept that help despite pride and fear, recognizing that sometimes accepting support is wisdom rather than weakness. From those 2 choices came everything, Janelle had said. 25 years of love and partnership, 4 children raised with security we never imagined possible that first night, grandchildren who'll never know the desperation we felt sitting in that parking lot. A foundation Grant established, continuing to help families facing similar crises, all of it traced back to one cancelled blind date and one chance parking lot encounter. Standing there with her children and grandchildren, Janelle had understood that sometimes life's greatest blessings come disguised as disasters: a cancelled date, a broken car, being at absolute lowest point with nowhere to go but up. Those moments of crisis create opportunities for compassion, for connection, for relationships built on something more solid than romance or convenience. Grant had been looking for connection that evening 25 years ago. Janelle had been desperate for help, and from that meeting of need and generosity had come family, love, partnership that had lasted until death, and whose impacts would extend across generations through the children they'd raised and the values they'd modeled. That was the real miracle of the parking lot, not that a wealthy man had rescued a desperate woman, though that narrative was simpler. The real miracle was two people meeting in crisis and choosing mutual support, building genuine partnership from foundation of compassion and gratitude, creating family through consistent presence and unconditional love rather than just biological connection. 30 years after that transformative parking lot meeting, the extended Whitfield family, now including Emma's 3 children, Lucas's 2 children, Grace's infant son, and Nathan's twin daughters, gathered for a special reunion at Bella Notte, the restaurant where Grant had first bought Janelle and her children dinner 3 decades earlier. Janelle, now 78 and still vibrant despite being widowed for 12 years, had organized the gathering specifically to share the full story with the youngest generation who'd only heard pieces of it from various family members. 30 years ago tonight, Janelle had begun after everyone was seated at the private dining room Grant's company had reserved. I was sitting in the parking lot outside this restaurant, crying with my 2 young children beside me. My car had broken down. I'd just been rejected from a job interview for bringing my kids. My ex-husband had refused to help, and I had no idea how I was going to feed Emma and Lucas dinner that night, let alone get home or fix the car. The youngest grandchildren had listened with wide eyes, clearly struggling to imagine their successful, confident grandmother as desperate and crying in a parking lot. A stranger walked by, Janelle had continued. A man who'd been stood up for a blind date and was heading to his car feeling lonely and disappointed. He could have walked past us, probably should have, given that interfering in strangers' crises is generally risky. But he stopped. He asked if we were safe. He listened to my story. And then he helped. That stranger was your Grandpa Grant, Janelle had explained to the children. He bought us dinner at this very restaurant. He called a mechanic to fix my car. He paid for the repairs without expecting repayment. He held Lucas while I helped Emma use the restroom. And most importantly, he treated my children with genuine kindness rather than seeing them as burdens or obstacles. Emma, now 44 with her own teenagers, had added her perspective. I was 4 years old that night. I remember being scared because Mummy was crying, and when Mummy cried it meant things were really bad. I remember a tall man kneeling down to talk to me about Mr. Buttons, my teddy bear. I remember him ordering me spaghetti with meatballs and actually listening when I talked about preschool. But mostly, I remember feeling safe for the first time in months. Dad Grant made us feel safe. Lucas, 43, and a successful attorney, had shared his memories. I don't remember that specific night, I was only 3. But I remember the feeling of everything changing after Dad came into our lives. Before him, life was scary and unpredictable. After him, there was stability, regular meals, bedtime routines, someone who showed up consistently. Dad Grant didn't just help us that one night, he kept helping, kept showing up, kept choosing us every single day for 20 years until he passed. The lesson we want you all to understand, Janelle had told the grandchildren, isn't about hoping for rescue when things are difficult. The lesson is about the power of compassion, choosing to help when you're able, accepting help with gratitude when you need it, and recognizing that sometimes the most important relationships begin not with romance, but with simple human kindness. Grandpa Grant had resources that night, Janelle had continued. Money to pay for dinner and car repairs, connections to reliable mechanics, time he'd planned to spend on a date that got cancelled. He chose to use those resources helping us, and I chose to accept that help despite pride and fear. Those two choices, his compassion and my willingness to accept support, created everything you see here today. This family, these relationships, the stability that's allowed all of you to pursue your dreams. One of Emma's teenage daughters had raised her hand shyly. "Grandma, what happened to your ex, our biological grandfather? Does he know about all of this?" Janelle had smiled sadly. "Marcus, your biological grandfather eventually remarried and has his own family. He terminated his parental rights to Emma and Lucas when they were 12 and 11, allowing Grant to legally adopt them. Marcus made that choice not out of concern for the children's well-being, but to avoid continued child support obligations. I haven't spoken to him in over 20 years. Emma and Lucas occasionally hear from him through social media, but he's never been a meaningful presence in their lives, or yours. Sometimes," Janelle had added gently, "the parent who raises you matters more than the parent who gave you their DNA. Marcus contributed biology. Grant contributed everything else: love, presence, support, guidance, security. Emma and Lucas are Grant's children in every way that actually matters." The evening had continued with stories from various family members about Grant, his consistent presence at school events, his patience teaching them various skills, his willingness to have difficult conversations, his joy in their accomplishments, his support during their struggles. A picture had emerged of a man who'd stumbled into fatherhood through a parking lot encounter, but who'd embraced that role completely, loving children who weren't biologically his as fully as he'd later loved Grace and Nathan, who were. Dad never treated Emma and Lucas differently from Grace and Nathan, Grace had observed during the gathering. She was now 33, a pediatrician, married with one young son. He loved all four of us equally, parented us the same, provided the same opportunities and expectations. We were just his kids, period. Nathan, 32 and a software engineer at his father's former company, had added, "Growing up, I didn't even understand that Emma and Lucas weren't biologically Dad's children until I was probably 8 or 9. Someone at school asked why my older siblings looked different, and I was confused they were just my brother and sister. The biological distinction had never mattered in our house." "That's because it didn't matter to Grant," Janelle had explained. "From the moment he met Emma and Lucas in that parking lot, he treated them as children deserving love and care. When we started dating and eventually married, he adopted them legally as soon as Marcus allowed it. They were his children completely. He never once referred to them as stepchildren or treated them as less than fully his." 35 years after the parking lot meeting, Janelle had published a memoir about her experience, The Parking Lot Family, How One Act of Compassion Created Everything. The book had become unexpectedly popular, resonating with single parents facing similar struggles and with people who'd experienced unexpected kindness that had transformed their lives. During the book tour, Janelle had been asked repeatedly about the fairy tale aspect of her story, the struggling single mother rescued by a wealthy stranger who'd become her husband. She'd pushed back on that framing consistently. "This isn't a fairy tale about rescue," Janelle had explained during one particularly large book event. "It's a story about mutual support between people who needed different things. Grant needed connection and family after losing his parents and drowning in work. I needed practical support, getting through crisis, and opportunity to build better life for my children. We gave each other what we needed, not through rescue but through genuine partnership. Grant didn't swoop in and fix everything immediately," Janelle had continued. "He helped with immediate crisis that night, dinner, car repair, basic safety. But rebuilding my life took years of work, most of which I did myself. Grant provided employment opportunity, but I had to prove I could do the work. He offered support, but I had to accept it and use it effectively. He became father to my children, but we built that relationship together over time through consistent presence and love. None of it was instant or magical. It was hard work, by both of us building something meaningful." The book had inspired multiple organizations supporting single parents, some providing emergency car repairs like Grant had done, others offering employment opportunities and professional development. Janelle had been actively involved in several of these organizations, using her platform and the foundation Grant had established to help families facing circumstances similar to what she'd experienced. "Every family deserves what Grant gave us," Janelle had said during the launch of one such program. "Not necessarily a wealthy benefactor that's rare and not replicable as system, but emergency support during crises, employment opportunities that consider parenting realities, communities that help rather than judge, systems that recognize single parents are doing their best under difficult circumstances. That's what we're building, not fairy tale rescues, but practical support helping families move from crisis to stability. 40 years after the parking lot meeting, Janelle had celebrated her 80th birthday, surrounded by her massive extended family, 4 children, 11 grandchildren, 3 great-grandchildren, plus various in-laws and close friends who'd become family over the decades. They'd gathered again at that same parking lot spot, now commemorated with not just the small plaque, but a full memorial garden that Grant's foundation had created. 40 years since the night that changed everything, Janelle had reflected as they'd stood in the memorial garden. I was 28 years old, desperately poor, crying with my children in a parking lot. Grant was 38, wealthy but lonely, walking from a cancelled blind date. 2 people at very different life stages, with very different circumstances, meeting by chance in a moment when both needed something the other could provide. What we built from that meeting, Janelle had continued, wasn't fairy tale romance where everything became perfect instantly. It was genuine partnership, 2 people supporting each other through challenges, building family together, creating something meaningful that's benefited not just us, but thousands of others through the foundation and programs we've established. Emma had stepped forward then, now 64 with her own grandchildren. Mom, Dad, Grant, would you tell us one more time about that first night? The whole story, all the details. I want my grandkids to hear it directly from you, how Grandpa stopped, how he helped, how it felt from your perspective. So Janelle had told the story one final time in detail, with all the emotions of that desperate evening still vivid 4 decades later. The car breaking down, the job rejection, sitting on the curb with Emma and Lucas, trying to be strong for them, but falling apart. Grant, approaching cautiously, asking if they were safe, listening to her story. The decision to accept his help despite pride and fear. Dinner at Bella Notte, where Grant had treated her children with genuine care. The hours waiting for car repairs during which Lucas had fallen asleep on Grant's chest and Emma had held his hand. The feeling of relief and confusion and cautious hope as they'd driven away that night. I texted Grant when we got home, Janelle had said. Told him we were safe, thanked him for his help, promised I'd repay the car repairs. I assumed that would be the end of it, a kind stranger who'd helped during crisis then moved on with his life. But Grant didn't move on, Janelle had continued. He kept showing up, at the restaurant where I worked, at the library, at the park where I took the kids, building friendship first, getting to know Emma and Lucas, earning our trust gradually, then offering me employment opportunity that transformed our economic circumstances, eventually admitting he'd fallen in love with me, with my children, with the possibility of being family together. We dated for a year before he proposed, Janelle had recounted, married after a brief engagement. He legally adopted Emma and Lucas when they were 12 and 11 after Marcus finally agreed to terminate his rights. We had Grace and Nathan together, built a life that lasted 20 years until he passed suddenly at 58. And now, 40 years after that first parking lot meeting, I have 4 children who all called him Dad, 11 grandchildren, 3 great-grandchildren, and a legacy of helping others that continues through the foundation he established. The real miracle, Janelle had concluded, wasn't that a wealthy man helped a poor woman, though that mattered. The real miracle was that 2 people met in crisis and chose mutual support rather than exploitation, that we built genuine partnership rather than rescue dynamics. That Grant loved my children as completely as he later loved our biological children, that we used our combined resources helping thousands of other families rather than just enjoying our own comfort. That's the legacy worth celebrating, not rescue but partnership, not charity but mutual support, not fairy tale but real love built on foundation of compassion and respect. As the family had dispersed that evening, Janelle had stayed in the memorial garden alone for a few minutes, looking at the plaque commemorating that transformative evening 40 years earlier. Grant had been gone for 12 years now, but his influence permeated everything, the children he'd raised who were now raising their own children with the values he'd modeled, the foundation continuing to help families in crisis, the organizations inspired by their story now operating independently, the grandchildren and great-grandchildren who'd never faced the kind of desperate poverty she'd experienced that night in the parking lot. "Thank you," Janelle had whispered to Grant's memory, "for stopping when you could have walked past, for helping without expecting anything in return, for loving my children as your own, for building partnership with me rather than trying to rescue or control me, for showing me what healthy love looks like, for creating family with me that's lasted 40 years and will continue through generations we'll never meet. Thank you for everything." And standing there in the memorial garden on the spot where Grant had found her crying 40 years earlier, Janelle had understood that sometimes the most important moments of our lives look like disasters at the time: a broken-down car, a cancelled date, sitting on a curb crying in a parking lot. Those moments of crisis create opportunities for compassion, for connection, for relationships that transform not just individual lives but entire family trees across generations. One cancelled blind date, one broken-down car, one stranger choosing to help rather than walk past, one desperate woman accepting support despite pride. From those simple choices had come 40 years of love, partnership, family, and systemic change, helping thousands of others facing similar crises. That was Grant and Janelle's legacy, not a fairy tale rescue, but a real story about human compassion, about choosing to help when you're able and accepting help when you need it, about building genuine partnership rather than letting economic disparity create power imbalances, about loving children, whether they share your DNA or not, and about using whatever privileges and resources you have to help others climb out of the crises you've escaped. 40 years after that transformative parking lot evening, their story continued, echoing through 4 children, 11 grandchildren, 3 great-grandchildren, thousands of families helped by their foundation, and countless people inspired to show compassion to strangers in crisis because they'd heard about the single father, CEO, who'd stopped to help a crying woman with 2 children in a parking lot, beginning a family that would last generations and touch thousands of lives. And perhaps that was the truest measure of a life well lived, not wealth accumulated or accolades earned, but the ripples of compassion extending outward from simple choices to help, to love, to support, to build something meaningful together, touching lives across decades and generations in ways the original actors could never fully comprehend, but which would continue long after they were gone.